The sun hung low over Florida's turquoise horizon, casting a warm, golden hue across the sandy beach. There, amidst the rhythmic rush of waves, she walked, each step behind her a silent testament to unseen tears. The shoreline, a witness to her solitude, mirrored a heart burdened by the echoes of a daughter's disdainful rejection. "Just go away," her daughter had sneered, poisonously casual. It was a moment that carved itself into her mind with the sharpness of betrayal. Back at her once lively home, the windows framed a silent tableau of missed conversations and vacant echoes. The walls, accustomed to vibrant tales of family, now stood as solemn sentinels to an emptiness that stretched and expanded. Among her possessions were faded photographs, whispering secrets of forgotten embraces and moments that once brimmed with warmth. Yet despite the pain, there was an unopened letter, its presence heavy with words unspoken, a repository of the heart-uttered truths she wished for, but never voiced aloud. Inside, the family gallery told stories not of togetherness, but of silent judgments passed over unshared moments. The portraits seemed clouded, their faces obscured by shadows heavier than paint. In the mirror, her reflection held more than just her likeness. It carried the invisible weight of burdens unshared and dreams invalidated. Her diary, once a keeper of aspirations, now quietly screamed of years marked by neglect. Even the dinner table, once a place of celebration, seemed set only for grievances unuttered. The heirloom quilt, with its fabric of survival and neglect, wrapped around her, a tactile reminder of the unyielding love she had once sown into her family. The heart's unrest pushed her into conversations under midnight skies, whispering to stars that neither judged nor turned away. Alone, she matched the metronome of a ticking clock, with a heart full of tears unshed. She refused to let past memories claw at her soul, keeping them dormant beneath layers of silence. A lone candle flickered, its dance choreographed by the gentle sighs of wishes never granted. In her hands, a pen hovered over the blank pages of a diary, poised to capture stories yet untold, stories of resilience and quiet strength. A pivotal change began with an old cedar chest. Its lid creaked open to reveal a warmth almost forgotten. Music, once the companion of her solitary dances, seeped back into her life like an old friend. The golden locket she found gleamed anew, a dormant spark now rekindled, affirming an ownership long denied. Among her treasures lay a forgotten letter, now read again with a voice no longer muted. She reclaimed the garden, each sprout a proud declaration of survival and resilience, reminding her that life could begin anew, even in the shadow of abandonment. In her garden of second blooms, every seed she sowed defied the voice that told her to go away. A solitary bench became her refuge, a place where she listened to nature's choir and found her peace. Her hands, dirty with soil, a testament of her presence and defiance, crafted a narrative of rebirth one seed at a time. The old oak tree cast its calming shadow, its roots intertwined with her story, offering solace and acceptance where human connections had frayed. Morning dew on the petals seemed to breathe life into her subdued aspirations, and a butterfly, landing lightly on her shoulder, whispered a message of self-recognition and worth. Invisible threads of connection began to weave themselves into her life once more. An unexpected encounter at the market made her smile, a gesture forgotten in the chaos of past grievances. Around her, a quilt of friendship began to stitch itself together from unspoken shared experiences, each thread a testament to the empathy she found in strangers' eyes. Her presence, though seemingly unnoticed, left unseen impressions, subtle yet lasting. A simple cup of tea shared with an old friend revived warmth and restored silence to a comfortable familiarity. Her quiet reclamation began as she stood at the edge of an empty room, feeling its promise rather than its past. The gentle sway of an empty rocking chair cradled her dreams, while her silent gaze over the horizon expanded to reclaim a world she once felt banished from. In the solitude of morning stillness, she found her resilience, not in screams or confrontation, but in a strength unseen, yet palpably felt. Her legacy became one of whispers, each a ripple of quiet justice, not roaring for recognition, but deciding to begin anew with dignity intact. The sun dipped lower in the Florida sky, casting a golden hue over the ocean waves that lapped gently at Charlotte's feet. Beneath the sprawling palms, her footsteps marked a solitary path along the shore, each step speaking of tears too long unseen, swallowed by the rhythm of the tides. She walked these sands every day, a ritual of quiet contemplation, a silent dialogue with herself as she sought solace in the whispers of the sea. With each step, Charlotte recounted the words that had become her everyday mantra. You are enough. You are stronger in silence. You are rooted in dignity. Words she'd internalized, planting them like seeds in her soul, hoping they would blossom into something beautiful amid the chaos of forgetting and being forgotten by those she loved most. Her home, just a short distance from the water's edge, loomed like a relic holding more melancholy than comfort. The windows framed rooms, once filled with laughter and conversation, now emptier echoes of what once was. Each closed sash signified missed encounters, moments with her daughter that never bloomed into full conversations, just sidelong glances over meals and the rustle of newspapers that spoke louder than words. Inside, faded photographs lined a hallway wall, those still-life portraits holding stories of embraces long relinquished to time. Charlotte would often stand there, tracing the outlines of familiar faces with her eyes, lingering on her daughter's younger visage, a smile that was brighter, eyes that held a shared world of possibility before bitterness grew like ivy between them. The pictures were a silent testament to the love she poured out, the sacrifices she made, shielding her child from storms in her youth, only to find herself weathering the cold front alone in her twilight years. The sea breeze, gentle and persistent, wrapped around her like the tender embraces she once gave so freely. It carried whispers of her past tenderness, love given without condition, echoes of lullabies sung under moonlight, of comforting murmurs against nightmares, and the resilient warmth she offered in exchange for teenage rebellion and harsh words. It was the wind that knew her secrets, the one that ferried her goodwill to the horizons and returned with the salt of her unshed tears. Sitting on her porch, the world felt small, condensed into the space beneath the palm's shadows. Here, she found a sense of belonging despite the voids in her life. It was on this porch that she discovered an object of profound, if unintentional, impact, an unopened letter. Unlike discarded scraps of her life, this envelope was swept into her path by a fortunate gust. This letter, addressed to her unmistakably, lay obstinately closed, the glue of the envelope crystallizing the words she would never read aloud, but spoke daily in her heart alone. That letter became a symbol, a repository of unspoken regrets and wishes, her desires to mend, to explain, to reach out across the silence, but knowing it was safer kept as it was, unblemished by the disappointment of human frailty. It became a mirror of her internal vow, to communicate through gestures and the legacy of her silent fortitude. Her heart, though burdened by the past, beat with the quiet rebellion of inner peace. In those moments beneath the palms, Charlotte discovered the depth of her strength. It was not in fighting against the neglect or the sting of her daughter's rebuke, but in embracing her history and the lessons the years etched into her skin. There was power in her silence, a wisdom that spoke louder than any shouted accusation or tearful plea could. She was not a burden. She was a woman standing at the edge of her own life, having reclaimed her inheritance, not just of material, but of dignity and self-worth. She knew now what her legacy would be, not one of grandeur, but of simple resistance, of reclaiming who she was and what she stood for. Charlotte understood at last that in the stillness of the palm's shadows, beneath the sun's watchful glance, she held the power to let go and to remember who she truly was, a woman bound not by others' narrow judgment, but freed by her own quiet defiance. The hallway was a long gallery of memories, where family portraits lined the walls. Each frame held smiling faces frozen in time, but beneath their glossy surfaces lay shadows of judgment and whispers of scorn. They no longer looked like family. Each face seemed tainted by the sneers of disdain she had endured, especially from her daughter. The photographs, intended to capture love and connection, had become silent testimonies to the estrangement they now symbolized. They were clouded by invisible fingers pointing blame, by eyes that saw not her sacrifices, but perpetuated a facade of unity. Passing by the antique mirror, she paused. In its glass, she didn't just see herself. She saw a lifetime of burdens reflected back. It was as if the mirror held an unflinching record of her struggles, the nights spent awake, worrying about her children, the tears wept in solitude. Yet in this mirror there was no deception, no cover-up. It revealed everything she had become, a woman bruised by care but fortified by silence. The mirror did not distort, it clarified. In its depth, she saw more than age marking her skin. She saw resilience carved into her very being. Nearby, an old, worn diary lay open. Its pages, yellowed with time, were filled with her dreams and aspirations, many unfinished, most invalidated by the dismissive glances of her family. The words she had once penned with hope felt like distant echoes now, lost amidst the cacophony of her daughter's indifference. Memories of naive dreams of being a mother cherished for her giving spirit lingered. Every dismissive sneer from her daughter tarnished another entry until the ink seemed faded, not just from time, but from the erosion of neglect. The dinner table, once a place of warmth and gathering, appeared set for celebration, yet felt hauntingly empty. Plates laid out as if for a festive occasion, but instead of laughter, there loomed a tension that silenced voices. Unspoken grievances sat heavily between empty chairs where family once gathered, leaving a void larger than any seating arrangement could conceal. It reminded her of the discussions that went awry, accusations that flew unchecked, hovering above the meal like ghosts refusing to be dismissed. Then there was the heirloom quilt, draped over the armchair, its patches telling stories of survival interwoven with neglect. Each square was stitched from moments of her life, the good and the painful, the hopeful and the betrayed. Her grandmother had started the quilt, adding pieces from dresses she wore during the hard years of the Depression. Each patch, a battle won through silent endurance, was now her legacy too. Yet, it also bore witness to times when her love went unnoticed, her sacrifices uncelebrated. She lingered a moment by the quilt, fingers tracing the edges of a patch her daughter had once clumsily sewn as a child. A concoction of bright reds and blues with uneven threads, expressive of innocent love that hadn't yet learned the language of judgment. This quilt, warm with history, yet threaded with pain, was her silent rebellion, a tapestry of dignity, patience, and an unwavering spirit. Every object in this room spoke to her, resonating with her unvoiced plea for respect and acknowledgement. She understood now that sometimes justice didn't scream, it decided. Each photograph, each page of the diary, each dish on the table, each patch of the quilt, stood not just as relics of a life mildly spent, but as monuments to her inner strength, lighting the path she would now walk alone. Her roots, once threatened, had found firmer soil in her heart. The silence of the gallery became her rebellion, her reminder of what was truly valuable, preserving her dignity and reclaiming an inheritance far more sacred than material wealth, the inheritance of her own worth. The night was hushed, the world asleep, while Edith lay awake beside the lone candle struggling against darkness. Midnight was her confidant, the only witness to whispers she shared with the stars, ethereal, glimmering spectators to her silent anguish. Each twinkle above seemed like a knowing nod, an acknowledgement of the stories unsaid, the apologies unreceived. The solitude felt less solitary under the celestial canopy, providing a solace that daylight never could. Daylight was loud, relentless, but the night embraced her with silence. Within this nocturnal cocoon, the clock on the wall became more than a timekeeper. It morphed into her companion, each tick harmonizing with her heartbeat, echoing the unshed sorrows that resided deep within. She often wondered if each tick held the vibrations of words unsaid, apologies not voiced, moments lost to the chasm of misunderstanding. The clock, with its unyielding march, mirrored her life, steady, unstoppable, yet laden with pauses that only she could discern, the rhythmic symphony of enduring silence. Memories, stubborn in their dormancy, knocked subtly at the door of her mind. She could sense their presence but refused their call, for to acknowledge these memories was to allow them to stir the waters of emotions long since settled into quiet resignation. Edith knew that these whispers from the past could unravel the tapestry of strength she had meticulously woven, a strength crafted from countless threads of silent standing and smiling through bitterness. A lone candle on her bedside became an unintended oracle, flickering with the wishes she held but never permitted herself to articulate. The flame danced to her unspoken hopes, a small beacon in a room filled with shadows, as if trying to light the path to untraveled dreams. It represented something she dared not name, perhaps her zeal to reclaim pieces of herself unjustly taken, a desire to see her dignity returned, not with fanfare, but with the quiet acknowledgement only she and the sky above knew she deserved. Her hand hovered over the blank pages of a journal, suspended in a moment where potential met fear. This poised pen was both a threshold and a barrier. It invited her to spill the untold stories that danced within her like the candle's flame, yet it also intimidated her with its demand for honesty. Would words on a page give life to her lived realities, or would they become yet another testament to what remained unsaid between her and the daughter who now saw her as disposable? The pages were empty, but not barren. They awaited her stories, those not meant for ears inclined toward judgment, but for the heart that longed for release. In this sacred silence, Edith discovered that not all battles are fought with raised voices and pointed fingers. Some wars are waged quietly, with the silent embrace of acceptance and the subtle rebellion of living well, despite being diminished in someone else's view. Each night she lay like this, between stargazing whispers and the ticking clock, she constructed a fortress of dignity around her heart. Silent surety, rather than loud confrontation, was her chosen rebellion. It was in this determined quietude that she found her most profound strength, a strength revealed in her decision to take back what was once taken for granted, not as a rebuttal, but as a reclamation of self. The moonlight spilled gently through the window, casting a silvery sheen on the old cedar chest resting in the corner of Louise's bedroom. It was an heirloom from a past life, a vessel of forgotten warmth and cherished memories. With her daughter's biting words still echoing in her mind, "Just go away," Louise found herself drawn to this chest, a repository of her resilience. As her fingers traced the aged wood, she felt an unusual surge of determination. It had been years since she last opened it, years filled with silent endurance and the erosion of familial bonds. Lifting the lid released a delicate cascade of scents, reminiscent of cedar woods and the softness of childhood dreams. Inside lay a tapestry of her past, weaving narratives of hope and heartache, safety and solitude. The items were relics of her youth, each one carrying the weight of unspoken stories. Her hands hovered above the contents before settling on a small, dusty record player. This modest device had been her companion through many a long night, the melodies of forgotten tunes enveloping her like a balm, soothing the bruises of disregard and neglect. She set the player gently on a table and blew the dust off an old record. The music crackled to life, a waltz from decades ago unfurling like a spectral wisp in the air. Louise closed her eyes, swaying ever so slightly as she let the notes transport her to a time when she twirled under the stars, dancing alone, yet never lonely. She had once believed that such solitude empowered her, grounding her even as the world around her spun out of control. Now, the music reignited a flicker of that lost independence, a gentle reminder that she'd been whole long before life's injustices sought to define her. Her attention shifted to a golden locket nestled among the odds and ends. It had been a gift from her grandmother on her 18th birthday, a family heirloom passed through generations. Its clasp had tarnished over the years, but as she opened it, the photograph inside still shined, a captured moment of spirited youth. Holding the locket, she felt a renewed sense of ownership, not just over the piece itself, but over her own story. It was not her daughter's to dictate nor dismiss. Each shimmer of gold symbolized reclaiming a narrative that was uniquely hers, a narrative that had been waiting, patient, and undiminished for her acknowledgement. Amongst these artifacts lay a forgotten letter, its once pristine edges now frayed and yellowed with age. It was a letter from her younger self, written during a time of transition, a pause before stepping into adulthood's complex dance. Reading the earnest script, Louise heard the voice of a woman who had once been vibrant and vocal, full of dreams not yet tethered by the expectations of the world. The letter voiced ambitions and desires no longer distant, but echoing with immediacy, urging her to remember who she was before life demanded she silence her truths. Spurred by this rediscovered courage, Louise turned her focus to reclaiming the neglected garden outside her window. It had become unkempt over the years, much like her self-worth, suffocated by weeds of inadequacy derived from years of dismissal. Now, she saw more than chaos. She saw potential. As she worked the soil, each sprout of life became a testament to her resilience, affirming her beliefs that she was more than a casualty of the past. With every plant she nurtured into bloom, Louise felt her spirit mirror that growth, unfurling in silent defiance to the doubts cast upon her. Each task she undertook became an act of quiet rebellion against the false narratives imposed on her, a reclamation of self unbound by others' definitions. In this determined solitude, she found her strength, a silent proclamation that she needed no one else's validation to assert her worth. As she stood in her garden amidst the twilight, Louise knew that reclaiming her inheritance, a life lived on her own terms, was the ultimate act of true justice and enduring dignity. The garden lay nestled behind her modest home, a sanctuary untouched by the trials that had stormed through her life. There, a solitary bench, chipped and worn with time, served as her throne. She chose this perch not for the view it offered, but for the embrace of solace it provided. As she sat, the air around her vibrated with nature's ancient symphony, crickets providing a bass rhythm, birds singing their hopeful arias, and the leaves whispering secrets born of the breeze. In this choir of life, there was no discord, only a harmony that soothed the soul. Her hands, gnarled with age but steady with purpose, broke the soil with delicate insistence. Each seed she pressed into the ground was more than a future bloom. It was a silent proclamation of her presence and worth. "I am here," each seed seemed to say, taking root in the very earth that had watched over generations of her bloodline. Here, in this small plot, she found a way to resist the narrative of absence that her daughter tried to script for her. With every handful of soil, she claimed her space, defining herself with actions rather than words. Nearby, an old oak tree stood sentinel, a monument to endurance and strength. Its branches reached out like welcoming arms, offering shade and comfort to the weary. Her fate felt intertwined with its roots, deep and invisible to those who did not look closely. She often imagined the roots whispering her name, tangled up with stories of her past, sowing resilience in every fiber. This tree had been there through every high and low, silently bearing witness to her life. It was more than wood and leaf. It was a memory etched into her heart. As dawn broke, the morning dew clung to petals around her, small droplets nourished not just by the sky, but by dreams she dared to entertain. Those dreams were faint, almost overwhelmed by years of neglect, but here, given time and hope, they began to shimmer gently into her reality. The dew carried whispers of her aspirations, light enough to be blown away, yet profound enough to lay the groundwork for what might come next. In those moments of solitude, a butterfly danced through the garden, alighting gently on her shoulder. To her, this fluttering visitor was more than just an insect. It was a messenger from a world unseen, carrying with it the message of transformation and self-recognition. "You are changing too," it seemed to say, a reminder that her story was still being written, and she was its rightful author. The butterfly's touch was a benediction, sealing her newfound conviction that she was as vital and transformative as the garden she tended. Each of these elements, the bench, the seeds, the oak, the dew, and the butterfly, formed a tapestry of whispers and silences, a symphony of life that underscored her quiet rebellion against irrelevance. She found empowerment not in loud declarations, but in the persistent nurturing of things that grew slowly, each an echo of own growth. Here, in the garden, she recaptured her dignity, not by reclaiming a loud place in the world, but through the quiet insistence of her rightful belonging. The soil under her fingers, rich and loamy, felt like home, a place where she was wanted, where she was needed, where every gesture and movement honored her identity and strength. And so she sat each day on that solitary bench, listening to nature's choir with a heart that raised its own silent anthem of resilience. In the garden of second bloom, she found more than the chance to grow flowers. She found the slow blooming of herself. This garden was her inheritance, not taken back, but cultivated anew, every petal and leaf a testament to silent victories and unseen strengths. Here, she chose not just to exist, but to thrive, under a sky that watched her with quiet admiration. A chance encounter at the bustling local market brought a flicker of unexpected warmth to her heart. Cecilia shuffled through the aisles, her faded wicker basket swinging gently by her side, an extension of her years of grocery runs for a family that no longer cared. The market was alive and cacophonous, but she moved like a ghost amidst the vibrant colors and loud, haggling voices. Her fingers grazed fresh produce, as if reassuring herself that her tangibility mattered in this world, where her own daughter had once ordered her to just go away. She spotted the familiar face of an old neighbor from years past, someone whose smile used to be part of her routine, part of the memory of simpler, more connected days. The neighbor flashed a broad smile, a silent sharing of familiarity that dug deep through layers of neglect, sparking a twinkle of forgotten self-worth in Cecilia. Their greeting was brief, perhaps insignificant to an onlooker, but for Cecilia, it felt like a lifeline cast amidst the churning seas of exile. That encounter was a tiny stitch in the quilt of resilience that Cecilia was assembling day by day. Friendship, she'd discovered, rarely needed loud proclamations or constant affirmations. Like the quilt now growing in patches at home, glued by unspoken shared experiences, companionship was about warm threads that bound people invisibly, building comfort that spoke louder than any words. Her gatherings of such encounters, sown in the shared understanding of aged souls, sewed her fragmented heart with quiet dignity, protecting her from her haunting solitude. Wandering further, she became conscious of her own shadow, a silent companion that moved with her, a metaphor of her presence. People passed by, oblivious to her shadow's insistence on existence, yet every step she made across the sunlit pavements left an impression unseen to judgmental eyes. It was a soft rebellion against erasure, against a world that had chosen to overlook her. Her shadow, she realized, had always walked ahead, even when her presence was cast aside, a silent testimony of each path she'd braved. Amongst the crowd, she caught the glance of a stranger. There, in a blink, was the simple exchange of empathy, raw, straightforward. It startled her how much kindness could reside in unmediated mutual understanding. The stranger's eyes asked no questions. They demanded no explanations, just offered a shared humanity devoid of the burdens of judgment. It was a brief respite, like a cup of refreshing tea untainted by bitterness, that reminded her she was not alone, that humanity existed still in fragments scattered by fate. An invitation from an old friend later in the week was like an unexpected dawn. They hadn't met in years, each busy with life's relentless demands, but friendships from a life lived had a resilience forged in shared history. The visit was a balm, reminding Cecilia what it was like to exist without the echoes of despair defining her. Moments shared over that cup of tea were suffused with warmth, easing the hardened crevices of her heart, which her daughter's harsh words had formed. It was in these moments, where silence shared amongst friends carried more weight than any spoken apology, where she could feel the shards of her shattered dignity start to realign themselves. Betrayal had left its indelible mark, but Cecilia was slowly, silently finding her way back to what once made her strong. Her journey was not about erasing pain, but seeking a quiet form of redemption, one that allowed her to reclaim her space in a world she had unwillingly shrunk back from. As the visit ended, Cecilia left with a gentle resolve, not one born out of defiance or need for revenge, but from rediscovery. She was mending, just like the quilt waiting for her at home, each piece a new memory, each stitch a defiant reminder of her unwavering existence, connecting her past with the life she was reclaiming. Standing at the threshold of an empty room, the faint scent of lavender clinging to the wooden floor. She inhaled deeply, a ritual she had once performed with reluctant acceptance, but now did with quiet resolve. The room's emptiness, once echoing her own solitude, now held promise. A sanctuary where her breath could rise without being drowned by dismissive sighs or impatient glances. This was her space, a blank canvas, free from the undercurrents of disdain that had woven through her previous life. The rocking chair creaked with a gentle sway, its rhythm mirroring the heartbeats of countless days spent in the quiet turmoil of a house that no longer felt like home. This chair, an heirloom passed down through generations, had cradled her dreams. In its silence and sway, she found a cradle for her fantasies long set aside, visions of herself unbroken and unbent, even when every overture of love had been met with indifference. Gazing out across the horizon through the open window, her eyes followed the sun cresting above the sea, a world she was determined to reclaim, piece by fractured piece. The vastness calmed her, reminding her of the expanse of her own spirit, encased yet unyielding, a sea undiscovered by those who thought they knew her. Here, in the gaze over restless waters and whispering winds, lay her new compass pointing inward, heralding a journey to recapture the narrative once wrested from her grasp. In the soft glow of morning solitude, clarity dawned. It illuminated her inner corridors, the darkened promise of her soul now touched by light. Her resolve, quietly galvanizing with each breath, became the backbone of an unseen strength. Her morning routines became acts of quiet rebellion, small affirmations of power, a steaming cup of chamomile tea, a pair of worn slippers tracing familiar paths on unfamiliar terms. She reclaimed herself not with cymbals and horns, but with the hushed certainty of a gentle morning tide reshaping the shore. What she left behind was more than a house. It was a legacy of whispers, a history written between lines and sewn into the fabric of each room by eerie echoes. No longer would her life story be captured in the loud, discordant clang of conflict. Instead, it would dance quietly in her absence, resonate through peace, reinforcing dignity, and mend her fragmented identity with threads of whispers rather than roars. This choice, this silent decision to step back and breathe without catch, became her inheritance to herself. A life rewritten not in volume, but in the sanctity of silence, in the space where dignity breathed unfettered. Her absence would mirror a canvas slowly refilled, not with the chaotic strokes of others' expectations, but with the mindful, purposeful brush of self-rediscovery. She knew her story was not yet complete, and with each step away from where she was unwelcome, she moved closer to the woman she had almost forgotten. Her inheritance, taken back, was more than material. It was the authority over her narrative, power in silence, and the dignity in choosing not to shout. These, she understood now, were the whispers that echoed longer, resurrecting moments of grace and strength that would remain timeless.